Coastal Blue Carbon is really one of the newest ecosystem services to be recognized that wetlands provide, tidal wetlands, particularly salt marshes, tidal wetlands, seagrasses, mangroves. And these systems are really good at sequestering and storing carbon. And so recognizing those values can help provide new incentives for accomplishing restoration or conservation goals while mitigating for climate change.
What we know around the world is that these coastal resources are being destroyed and that CO2 is getting released back to the atmosphere. Around about 500 million tons of CO2 are being released from drained wetlands all around the world. Now, how much is that? 500 million tons is almost exactly the same emissions as California. So this is a pretty big number. You know, it's happening in all these coastal areas. And so if we can improve the management of these coastal ecosystems, we could do a little bit towards better climate management.
Carbon credits are issued by organizations that are called standards, that are independent organizations that were established specifically to ensure the rigor and integrity of carbon offsets. There are standards that operate sort of in a voluntary market where individuals or companies or governments can purchase offsets on a voluntary basis. And then there are compliance markets, which are requirements that companies, polluters, are under certain limits, and so they may have to purchase offsets in order to meet those goals. So there are a couple of ways of taking advantage of these new values to help promote the restoration and conservation work that we all care about so much. On the market side, there are emerging tools and mechanisms to actually create greenhouse gas offsets or credits through tidal wetlands restoration or conservation projects. And those would be instruments that you can sell and provide additional financing for the restoration work. Doing a Coastal Blue Carbon project really means doing a restoration or conservation project that has these Coastal Blue Carbon values and that either you capitalize on from a market perspective or that you've recognized, and that becomes an additional incentive to undertake the project.
The market is there to try and help reduce emissions. And so there are what are called allocations, where a polluter will buy a certain number of allocations from somebody else to sort of limit their production of pollutants. And the idea is that you can try and help keep down ongoing pollution by transferring some of the benefits to more sequestration somewhere else.
The first thing you need to have is a pretty good sense of what the expected greenhouse gas benefits of your project would be. And so some kind of a feasibility assessment of the project. Does it meet all of the requirements that the carbon standards have in place? And what are the net greenhouse gas benefits? So then you can get a sense of, is it worth doing the accounting, worth the financial investment in order to get the financial credits on the back end of the project. For some projects, the carbon finance could be significant, but really in very few or almost no cases would we expect that carbon finance will pay for the entire project. It's more likely to be a portion, and how big that portion is going to depend on what the greenhouse gas benefits are and the complexities and the cost of doing the accounting.
Blue carbon and the idea of capturing that market and the value of storing carbon in those resources that we're working to conserve in coastal and estuarine areas, again, is becoming more and more a focus of the Nature Conservancy's work to try to develop solutions that are market-based that meet both our ecological goals as well as our goals for people.
I've been doing a lot of tidal wetland restorations, and looking at it from a blue carbon aspect opens a whole new avenue of evaluating success and the benefits of this type of restoration to mitigate climate change and also potentially provide income for long-term monitoring of these sites.
And not all projects which are good blue carbon projects necessarily mean you're going to get carbon financing. Some projects are too complicated, some projects are too small, but aggregated, they have an environmental benefit. So it could just be an incentive for better environmental management. Now, some projects might develop into good carbon finance projects. And so for those, you tend to be looking for much bigger projects, projects where it's not too complicated, at least for the first ones. So you might be looking at salt marsh restoration or forestry restoration at the top of an estuary, or maybe some projects where you already have carbon being released from drained wetlands and you manage that carbon better by keeping soils wet and possibly by restoring a wetland on top of it as well. So right now we're looking for the simplest projects to move things forward and hopefully going to be trying to scale them up.